Okay, I'm going to explain to you something about the resting potential at the neuron. And first of all, what we all have to know is that the resting potential is the situation where the neuron is not sending any signals, so where the neuron is at rest. And what you have to know is that at the resting potential, the inside of the cell is more negatively charged than the outside of the cell, and the voltage is approximately minus 70 millivolt. And how does it come that the inside is more negatively charged than the outside? Here the distribution of the ions play an important role. We have 4 different ions which are present at the neuron. And first of all, we have the Na plus ions. Then we have the sodium ions, sorry. Then we have the potassium ions or K plus ions. Next we have chloride ions or Cl minus ions. And last but not least, we have the A minus ions, which I have made in a triangle right now. And yeah, the distribution, like I already said, plays an important role. And with the potassium, we have more K plus ions on the inside of the cell than we have on the outside. Now this develops a concentration gradient of the potassium ions from the inside of the cell to the outside of the cell. And through the always open potassium background channels, these ions can cross the membrane easily and have no problems. Now we have the sodium ions. Here we have less on the inside than we have on the outside of the cell. But the problem with these is that almost all of the channels are closed, and I've marked the channels with red, and as you can see, as good as all of them are closed except of one, and so the sodium ions have more difficult time to cross the membrane. And the chloride ions, we have again more on the we have, wrong color, sorry. We have less on the inside than we have on the outside. And so again, we have a concentration gradient from the outside to the inside, like the sodium ions. And the negatively charged protein ions, which I forgot to mention, is we just have these on the inside of the cell, and they can't actually cross the membrane. And now, like I already said, the potassium can follow its concentration gradient to the outside without any obstacles, as the background channels are all open, and this leads to a streaming out of the potassium cells, ions. So this leads to the fact that we have a surplus of again the wrong color. Let me draw this quickly in. This moves out and this moves out, and this leads to the fact that we have a surplus of a positive concentration on the outside of the cell, and a more negative charging on the inside. As I already said, like the chloride ions, they stream inside, and the sodium ions can't actually stream in. And then we have the negatively charged protein ions, so these all lower the voltage of the inside of the cell. And this leads to the building of a potential difference, which is actually nothing different like electrical voltage. And this is working against the streaming out of the potassium. And like I said, the chloride is leaking in as well and manipulates the resting potential, or the potential difference, in a low way. So not that drastic, but it manipulates. And the sodium ions leak in as well, but and reduce the potential difference. And this would actually lead to a higher streaming out of the K+ ions, and this again would cause the breakdown of the resting potential. And here we have a counter method which is drawn in here, and this is called the sodium potassium pump. And this pump pumps out 3 sodium ions for each potassium ions it pumps in. And this under a permanent use of ATP. So permanent use of ATP. And actually this is how the resting potential is built. And if you now measure the voltage between the voltage of the inside and of the outside, you actually get the resting potential, which is, as already mentioned, approximately minus 70 millivolts. And we have relatively more sodium ions outside and more potassium ions inside the cell. This was already mentioned as well. And what do we need this for? Like, the potential difference has energy, which is then later on used to give the signal along the axon, which is later explained in the video concerning the action potential. Thank you for watching.